Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's coffee chat. My name is Daniel Truckenbrough, and I'm an Associate Marketing Manager at Brooks Publishing. And I'm very happy to have Denise Perez Binder here with us today to talk about teaching expectations and rules in preschool classrooms and programs. Before we begin, I just have a few webinar tips to go over. First, if you have any applications open on your computer, such as another web browser or email, if you close that, that can increase bandwidth to improve your viewing experience today. If you have a question during today's webinar, you can enter that in the questions tab of your webinar panel, and we'll either answer that in the chat or we'll take questions at the end during our Q&A session. If you'd like to minimize your webinar panel, there's a little orange arrow in the upper left-hand corner of the webinar tab. If you click that, it'll push the webinar panel over to the side, so you can increase the size of the presentation on your screen. And then you can click that arrow again to bring the panel back out to adjust audio settings or enter a question. And if you're experiencing any audio issues during today's webinar, first check the audio tab of your webinar panel and make sure that you have the correct speaker selected and that your speakers are turned up. And if that doesn't work, you can always exit out of the webinar and join back in, and that'll usually alleviate any issues. So Denise Perez Binder is a chapter author of Unpacking the Pyramid Model, a practical guide for preschool teachers, which was created by pyramid model experts and developers. And it's the first book that provides a comprehensive step-by-step overview of implementing the pyramid model for children ages 2 to 5. So if you'd like to learn more about Unpacking the Pyramid Model, you can go to bpub.fyi/unpacking-pm. And just heads up, we'll also be sending out an email tomorrow that'll have links to everything that's been discussed during today's webinar. So if you don't get a chance to write down the links, no worries, we'll be sending those links directly to you tomorrow. And we will also be giving out one free copy of Unpacking the Pyramid Model to an attendee today. So one attendee will be selected at random and emailed after the webinar. So go ahead and submit your questions, and then that can increase your chances of winning a copy of Unpacking the Pyramid Model. And last but not least, certificates of attendance are available for all webinar viewers, both live and recording viewers. And I'll be providing a little bit more information about how to get your certificate towards the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce your presenter today. Denise Perez Binder has been a member of the University of South Florida Pyramid Model Research Team since 2007. Denise currently serves as a training and technical assistance specialist with the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, the National Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, and the Pyramid Equity Project, where she provides training, technical assistance, and coaching to teachers and programs on the implementation of the pyramid model. Denise has a wealth of expertise in program-wide implementation of the pyramid model, practice-based coaching, and she is a trainer for the Teaching Pyramid Observation Tool for preschool classrooms, also known as the TPOT. So Denise, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Dan. So today we're going to be going over the chapter 8 in Unpacking the Pyramid Model book, which is my chapter, my favorite chapter. It's about expectations and rules. So we're gonna just do a quick overview of the difference between an expectation and a rule, how teachers and coaches go about developing expectations for your program, and classroom rules. We'll talk about how some strategies, some ideas for teaching and acknowledging expectations and rules across the program and in your classrooms. And then lastly, we'll have some ideas and some strategies about how we can power up with families and make sure that families understand the expectations of the program and our classroom rules. So I have some strategies, but there's so much more about this on the NCPMI website, and I'll be referring back to that as we go through. So just to orient us, we're really talking about strategies that promote social emotional competencies in young children, and we are referencing the pyramid model for that. And so pyramid model has strategies for universal promotion of social emotional skills for all kids that include how we develop relationships for children, with families, with colleagues that we work with. We talk about how we can set up high quality environments so that all the different kinds of learners that we support feel engaged and are ready to learn. And when we talk about expectations and rules, it really falls into that universal promotion tier about setting up an environment so every kid knows what's expected of them. They know how to meet those expectations. They've been taught, and they are acknowledged when they are achieving those expectations. So we're really today going to be focusing on that universal tier around supportive environments. And if you look through NCPMI website around high quality environments, you'll find lots and lots of extra strategies and additional ideas on coaching and developing expectations and rules. So where I always start when I'm coaching teachers is I want teachers to understand the difference between an expectation and a rule. And this is not new. It's how school-wide positive behavior supports defines expectations and rules. But for some reason, it feels like lots of places I go, the terms are used interchangeably. But what I really want us to understand is that these two concepts are very different. They serve different purposes, and they will have different outcomes for the kids and the families that you support. So first is expectations. Expectations are these big, broad concepts. They're the general ways you want everyone to act. So it applies to kids, it applies to adults in all settings across the entire program. Examples of an expectation might be things like being respectful, being safe, being a team player. These are those large kind of character traits that we are going to teach all kids to do all the time across the program. And so we often will talk about setting program-wide expectations. So meaning that the whole program, everybody in the program, from the office staff to teachers and paraprofessionals and family volunteers, we all are talking about the same expectations. We are talking about them, teaching them in the same way and reinforcing them in the same way. And when we can do that, we create this kind of shared focus for everyone that steps into our program knows what we're about and what we desire from our kids. So on this slide, you'll see an example of an expectation poster. We encourage you to translate those into different languages that represent the community that you serve. So in this example, you have a Spanish interpretation and then a Turkish translation, and then always including visuals so that our young learners understand what the words that we're talking about, because we know lots of our kids are not readers. Well, most of our kids are not readers. This is just another example of a program that I coached and the expectations that they developed, and then how they had them posted and translated into the languages that supported their community. And so that's expectations. And the next concept we're going to talk about is rules. So rules are different than expectations because they will help clarify expectations for specific settings. So they may only apply in a certain routine or to a certain activity. They are things like keeping your hands and feet to yourself. A rule for playground might be climb up the ladder and slide down the slide, which is something that would never apply in a classroom or a mealtime setting. So rules are different from expectations. They're going to help define an expectation, give you an example of how to be respectful or how to be safe in particular activities or particular settings across your program. Some examples of how teachers or programs display the rules. We always want to include some sort of visual. And so in this example, you see actual pictures of the children in the classroom exhibiting or practicing the rule, and then those are posted around the classroom, those pictures. We've also seen classrooms that will have clip art pictures, or I've seen teachers get really creative, and maybe it's looking eyes is your rule for circle time, and they've used the Mr. Potato Head eyes as a visual. So teachers can get really creative. You want to make sure that you've listed rules that your kids can understand, are developmentally appropriate, and that you've displayed them in a way that makes sense to the kids that you're working with. So we might have large group rules that are things like sitting on your bottom, hands in your lap, but those might be completely different for what we need kids to do when they go to the playground or when they're in the library. So it's okay to have rules for different areas or different routines across your classroom and across your program. Here's some examples of outside rules. Again, it's pictures of kids doing things in the setting that you want them to apply those rules to. So it's really recommended that we use visuals in this way to help kids learn and remember the rules. And then there might be specific kids that need more practice, or they need different kinds of reminders to learn the rules and be able to engage in that activity or that setting appropriately. So you might need to individualize rules. For this specific child, we had clip art pictures on a key ring that the paraprofessional held on her wrist or on a lanyard on her neck, so that she could cue that child wherever they were across the classroom or across the program at any time, multiple times throughout the activity, as much as she needed those cues. So expectations versus rules. Remember, our key point that we want to think about is these two concepts are different. They serve different purposes, and then you need to make sure that there's a distinction when you're teaching and when you're developing expectations versus rules. So you might have things like, we are super friends, expectation or a rule. So this is a big, broad concept. It can apply to anybody across any setting. So we're going to say that is an expectation. If you have something like walking feet, which is something I see everywhere, wherever we go, walking feet may apply to lots of settings across your program, but maybe not all, definitely not on the playground. We want kids to use their running feet. We want them to jump. We want them to climb outside. So this is a rule because it applies to just a limited number of settings. Feet on the floor, again, may apply to just a limited number of settings. So we're going to make this a rule. Safety first. So this is one of those big, broad concepts. We want everybody to stay safe across every activity in every space across our program. So this is an expectation. So when you're thinking about what's a rule, what's an expectation, think about, does it apply everywhere to every activity in every routine? Does it apply to every single person all day long across the program? And that's going to be the kind of measure to help you figure out, are we making rules? Are we making expectations? So when we're thinking about developing expectations and rules, some guidelines that we want you to think about. Always think about in developing ways to get your staff and your families input before you make these big grand posters and post them all over the place. If we can do some kind of activity or survey where we get this kind of feedback, we'll get so much more ownership and buy-in from staff and from families in the teaching and the acknowledging of the expectations and rules, and it's just going to add that much more power to that universal promotion skill. Let's think about involving kids in developing the rules. You'll be surprised at some of the rules kids come up with. They're a lot harder on themselves than we think. So maybe having some discussion about an expectation, maybe your program-wide expectation is be safe. And so let's talk about that with kids. What does that mean for them in the classroom, and have their input on developing some of those rules. We also want to make sure that once we get expectations solid, we've polled our staff, we talked to our families, we want to post those expectations and rules. We always want to make sure that the expectations and rules posters include visuals. We know our kids don't read, but so we need to have some sort of visual representation so that cues them into what they're looking at. If not, it's just words on a wall and it just simply becomes decoration. So making sure that they all have a visual every time. And then we need to teach. So the posters are great and they're beautiful and they're fun, but we need to go back and teach those concepts. We teach expectations and rules systematically, just like we teach any other concept across the day, just like we teach colors and shapes and letters. We want to teach expectations and rules in those same ways. And then last, we need to make sure that we're reinforcing and acknowledging when kids are meeting expectations, when they're meeting rules. Lots of times when I'll go into classrooms initially or go into programs, we see the opposite. So we see when kids aren't meeting rules, when they're not meeting expectations, that's when they get acknowledged. So we want to help programs and help teachers kind of flip that around and really looking for kids that are doing the good stuff. And when we do this, we realize that lots of kids are doing the right thing. And when we do call out kids for the right thing, it makes it so much more likely that everybody else is going to want to follow along because they want to get that attention too. So when you're thinking about starting to develop expectations or rules, we want to make sure that we've posted expectations that are positively stated so they tell kids what to do. So we've never set a rule that would be like no running or no screaming. But we want rules that say use walking feet, use indoor voices, so that tells kids what to do. When we post those expectations or rules, post them at a level where kids can see them, so at eye level, with a visual like we've already talked about, and post it in a place where they can see it all the time. So maybe thinking about somewhere inside the classroom or in the library center or outside on the playground. So where those things need to be applied is where you'd want to post them. We also want to consider developing rules that are few in number and expectations that are few in number. So we say less than 5. If we are adding posters that have more than 5 expectations, it's really going to be hard for kids to remember. It's hard for me to remember. It's hard for adults to remember. So keeping them few in number will help everybody kind of get on the same page. We're all talking the same talk, and we all can remember those things throughout the day. And then we want to make sure that we do a good teaching of those expectations and rules, and we review them regularly in whole groups, in small groups, and individually. And thinking about having discussions with families, with other staff, with kids about why it's important to follow expectations, why we need to have these rules to keep us safe throughout the day. So using those guidelines will help you develop rules and expectations that are most effective and meaningful for your program. Some strategies that we've used to get staff input, to get family input, is this handout, which we call the happiest child. So each staff member gets a copy of this worksheet, and they're asked to identify their top 3 characteristics. So thinking about the kids in their classroom that are always engaged and they have really appropriate social interactions. What is it about them that makes them able to persevere and to stay engaged and to really be that kind of outgoing, happy kid? And so when they think of their list, they write down their top 3, and then at a staff meeting, we'll come together and create a major list. So we eliminate all the duplicates. So everybody that said respectful, we combine those together so we don't have respectful 30 times. And then we group them by categories, and then we label each category. And then we kind of come to consensus on what our top 4 or so expectations are going to be for school. So I've done this with lots of programs. It feels like, oh my God, that's going to take so long, but it is really something that's pretty streamlined. It goes pretty fast, and you'll be surprised how many people want the same things for their kids, or they expect the same things for their classrooms. So there's lots of duplicates that we can eliminate, and we can get to our top 4 pretty quickly. And then we do the same thing for families. So we have a worksheet that is called Let's Talk About Expectations at Home. So we want family input on at home when their child is being the best, very engaged, being so friendly and cooperative with other adults, with their siblings, with their friends, and then they circle their top 3 choices. And then we do the same thing. So our leadership team brings together all these worksheets, and then we eliminate the duplicates, and we kind of compare to our staff worksheets and make sure that we're all on the same page with what we expect from our kids, the kids in our program. Again, when we do activities like this, it's so much more likely that our staff and our families are going to be bought into this change process, and they're going to be so much more willing to teach and acknowledge these things. And when we can have everybody teaching and acknowledging in the same concepts in the same way, it just becomes that much more powerful for our kids, and we get those durable changes that we're looking for in all our kids. This was just another example of a ballot that was sent out by a program leadership team to all staff. And so they kind of had an idea of where they wanted to go with expectations. And so they had 2 choices. So, and staff could vote on their choice. or they could vote on their top 3 at the bottom half of the ballot. So different ways you can get that done, but same concept, that we want people to have ownership over it, to feel like they had a voice, that it wasn't something that they were just told to do, another one of those things that they're just making me do, but they were a part of the development of it. So when we've developed the expectations that we want for our program, then we start to think about developing rules. And when we develop rules, we never want to develop rules for individual classrooms. We want teachers to have ownership of that. That's their space. That's where they spend their day, and that's how they work. So we want them to have ownership over classroom rules. But common areas like playgrounds or hallways, those are places where leadership team can take more, make more decisions about the rules that we talk about. And again, with rules, we want to make sure that there's visuals so kids can understand, because we know they can't all read the words. So this is an expectation and rule matrix, and we'll ask lots of our teams to think about developing these once their expectations are set. So you'll see the first column shows the program-wide expectations. So there's only 2. Show respect and stay safe. And they have 2 visuals that represent those 2 concepts across the whole program. And then the next column shows in classrooms, what do teachers teach in order to help kids learn to show respect? And the one rule was soft touches, and they have the visual for that. And in classrooms, what is the rule for staying safe? And they have walking feet. So you can see how the kind of the matrix lays out per area or per activity, and helps kids understand how to exhibit those expectations. So remember, when we're developing rules and expectation, keep your list of expectations or rules short so kids can remember them. They'll be able to learn them and memorize them easily. I mean, even your 2s and your 3s, they'll be able to tell you what the expectations are. They'll learn them, and if they're posted and taught in the right ways. When you're developing expectations and rules, make sure you're using words that kids will understand and they'll be able to grasp over time. If you're part of an elementary school and that school has school-wide expectations, make sure you use those for your classrooms. But you want to develop rules, classroom rules, that will help your kids understand. So your rules for your classroom may look very different than the rules that are set for the 3rd grade classroom or the 5th grade classroom. So you can use school-wide expectations, but you just want to make sure that you teach them with the rules that make sense for your kids. And if you're having difficulty developing expectations and rules, think about the skills that are most important for your kids to master, so that they're successful across your program. I know lots of programs get kind of hung up on this, and they want to like make it match their mascot, or they have a little song and they want the expectations to match their song. And I think that's fun and it's a great way to teach, but I really want you to think about what is it that you want your kids to learn to do in order to be successful throughout their educational career. So thinking of that first, and then if you can make it into a cute little song, so be it. But think about those character traits first. So next, when we think about teaching and acknowledging expectations and rules, like we said, This is going to be really important because the posters are cute and they're really fun. But if we don't teach them, kids are never going to learn them. So we need to make sure teachers are teaching expectations and rules systematically, just like they teach any other concept across the day. We want to make sure they're embedding opportunities for kids to practice the rules and expectation throughout the day, throughout the school year, and in different settings across the program. Giving them examples of what that expectation looks like and non-examples of what it's not, what it doesn't look like to be safe. And then always giving that descriptive feedback, that positive feedback when kids are following the rules or meeting expectations. So some strategies that I've seen teachers use that have been really successful is modeling with another adult or using the puppets to act out different scenarios. Kids love the puppets. Doesn't matter what the puppet is saying, but they're watching and they're following. So acting out scenarios with puppets is a really great way to get kids to learn expectations or rules. I've seen lots of schools that have songs, they have dances that go along with it, or hand movements, really fun ways to teach. Also, another great strategy, and I just saw this, it just got posted on NCPMI, but is using scripted stories. So developing a story that teachers can read in the classroom or that families can check out and take home, or maybe we send home in the newsletter or something like that, or on your Facebook page that goes over the expectations and teaches them in a way that's reinforcing for use at home or in the community. These are some examples of ways that I've seen teachers teach expectations. So this school had the 3 B's: be safe, be kind, and be respectful as their 3 expectations. So they have this large cutout of honeycombs all over the program. And well, this teacher has little action cards on those little white squares. And kids get a handful of picture cards, of action cards, and they get to Velcro it to the different level of the expectation honeycomb. And so that was just a fun way to practice what being safe looks like, what being kind looks like, and what being respectful looks like. So this is a video that I wanted us to watch of this is a 4-year-old classroom and how she's teaching the rules of the classroom. Here we go.
When we go into it, go over there and all the way over for our classroom rules. Malaya just started with us, so she's going to go over with us loud and clear. Can everybody help her?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Turn around every so you can see, because you do a great job saying them.
Okay.
Sit on the bottom on your bunny.
Okay.
All right, what is our first rule? Oh, I heard Amari. Let's try it again. Say it again. Sharing is caring. We share with our friends when we go in our stations. We have to make sure our friends, we give our friend a toy and they have a toy and we share it together, right? When we play with the house, do 2 people share? What else do we share?
Daddy.
With the Play-Doh?
No.
Yes, do we share with the Play-Doh?
Yeah.
Yes, we break it up and one person get a piece and another person get a piece, right? All right, what is our second rule? Oh, did you hear Malaya? Let's try it again. Let's say it again. Walking feet. Avery, show me how you do the walking in our classroom. Watch Avery, everyone. Come on. Yes, go ahead. You can walk right across. Oh, look at her feet, Sky. Do you see her feet? Do it again, Avery. Walk on over here to your spot. Walking feet. Awesome. High five. Show me how you sit crisscross applesauce. All right, the next rule. Point to the next rule.
Hey.
What does that say?
Inside voices.
Inside. Omari, show us inside voices. You gonna go over there and touch it? Yes. Come on over here. Show me your inside voice. Say inside voice.
Inside voice.
Inside voice. That is an inside voice.
Yeah.
Can you show me an outside voice? Say outside voice. Outside voice. That loud is, it's loud, right?
Yeah.
Let's do that inside voice. Inside voice. Good job. All right, our next rule, point to our rule. Malay, our last rule in the classroom is helping hands. Devon, what is helping hands? How can you help a friend? You can help Omari? Show me how you help him. If he need help with what? Getting up? Oh, look, he's grabbing your hand. That is helping hand. Bring him back. Bring him back. Omari, come back and sit. He's showing you how he do helping hands. Good job, Devon. Everybody clap your hands for Devon. He's showing us how we do helping hands. Awesome. I love it. So those are our rules when we're in the classroom. We put our hands in our lap because we want to have helping hands. We help our friends get up, or we help our friends with toys. If they fall on the floor, we use our helping hands to help them pick up all the toys. Right? What do we say? Yes.
Ma'am.
What do we say, Avery? Yes.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, helping hands. Is that helping hands?
Yes.
Is that a stop or a go?
Stop.
That's a stop. So when we're with our pointer, we only want to touch our board. We don't want to touch our friend because that is a stop. Everybody clap your hands for Malaya for helping us. Good job. Go back and sit on your camel.
So you can see in that example, she let a child who was just starting in the classroom go to the board and be the helper. They talked about each rule. They gave examples, sometimes non-examples, and then she always ended on an example. So I thought that was a really great way to teach. It felt like all the kids learned because they practiced, and even the child who just started in the classroom is getting to learn those rules. So that was a really great example. And that whole segment, that whole lesson she did took her just under 4 minutes. So it doesn't have to be this big to-do that takes up your whole morning meeting, but 4 minutes of time to make sure that everybody understands what is expected of them and how they can engage and participate in the classroom in a positive way. So here's another example, and we saw the last teacher kind of use this game, but we use this stop-go game a lot, and we have lots of tools around being able to use this game in the classroom on the NCPMY website. So we'll take a look at this example and see what you think.
I have a picture of a friend who's running in the classroom, using his feet for running. Guys, is that a stop or is that a go? It's a stop. Can you show me your red side? That's a stop. I see some reds. Very good. That's a stop. I have a friend, and you know what? They want to get through. So what he does is he kicks his friend's leg out of the way. Is kicking a go or is kicking a stop?
It's a stop.
Kicking is a stop. We use our feet for
Walking.
What are go things and what are stop things? Now, I have one other thing I want to do with you.
So again, just another fun way to talk about rules and expectations and get kids to practice in a way that's fun and interactive and has some hands-on teaching. So there's lots of ways that you can promote expectations throughout the program. This program did these little kinds of trinkets in teachers' mailboxes to get them excited about rolling out expectations. This school has a dinosaur mascot, and kids do a song and they do the dino shake dance around their expectations. This program did a program ride rollout. So they had everybody come together in their multi-purpose room and they did a lesson about their expectations. This program has staff shirts. So everybody in the program got a shirt that has their logo on the front and then the expectations on the back. This program also had shirts, but they also put their expectations on their letterhead. So any kind of communication that leaves the program, those things are there. So families will always be able to see and acknowledge them. These are some examples of acknowledging the expectations. So their expectations were called the high five for friends. So teachers had these sticky notes that looked like handprints, and they would write what kids did and put them on the wall so kids could see them, families could see them as they entered and exited the program. This is kind of similar. So they had a kindness tree, and the teacher used the little cutout hearts to write things that the kids did that met an expectation or met a rule. She would put them up on the tree, and then at the end of the month, she put all their hearts on this little frame and took their picture and sent the picture home for families. What a great way to include families and let them know what's going on in the program. So you always want to make sure that families know what's happening, they understand the expectations, and there's lots of different ways to get that done. This program did a rollout event at their open house. So they had a board that had all the expectations on it with a little explanation of each. And then families got to take pictures in front of this superhero board, which families love getting pictures of their kids, seeing pictures of their kids around the program. So that was a great way to get families involved. This program had a table at the front of the office. So when parents walked in to sign their kids in, they could see all the information. And every once in a while, they'd have a staff member at the table so that they could answer questions or engage in conversations with families about the expectations and the rules. This is an example of one of those scripted stories that I was telling you about. And so the program-wide leadership team created the book. It's all pictures of their kids and around their program, but they scripted it out based on their expectations that they developed. And then that book was in the library. Every classroom had a copy, and they could kids could take it home, or they could share it with families as needed. These are good news postcards. So every classroom at the front of their classroom door had, when we could walk into classrooms, had this little mailbox. It has the 2 expectations on the white card that says delivering respectful and safe behavior. So the little yellow cards are Post-it notes that teachers wrote how kids were meeting expectations or meeting rules, put it on the mailbox so that parents could see and other staff and families could see all the good stuff that was happening in the classroom. This is another handout that is on the CEFL website, but it helps families to start thinking about rules they'd want to have in their house, in their home, and helping kids to understand what they can do at home and having opportunities to practice those at home in the community, just like we do at school. So the more we can partner with families, the stronger, the more durable those characteristics, those lessons become, and they are maintained throughout for the long term, which is what we want for all our kids. So that was the content that I wanted to share about expectations and rules. I know Dan's been monitoring the chat for us, so if we have any questions.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Denise. It was fantastic information and tons of great useful resources. A lot of people really like the videos, and it's always helpful to see things in action to get a better idea of how to implement those in their own practice. So let's see. So we had a few listeners who were asking, should all classrooms in one program have the same rules? Or is it okay if the expectations across the program are consistent, but the rules vary from one classroom to another?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we encourage the program to have one set of expectations across the program. So every classroom, every area has the same expectations, the same poster with the same visuals. But classrooms, we think it's really important for teachers to be able to set their own classroom rules. So they can look different from classroom to classroom based on the developmental age of the children, based on the learning level of the kids. But we want to make sure that the rules that teachers create match the expectations, so that they are things that are going to help kids learn and practice the expectations, even if they look kind of are worded differently from place to place, from classroom to classroom.
Yeah. Let's see. Also, when developing expectations or rules, what sort of considerations should a program take into account regarding culture of the children that are in the classroom?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. And so I think it's really important to survey families and making sure that you understand what is important for families as far as social emotional development goes for their kids. And there's lots of programs that have multiple cultures represented. So making sure that we have a good handle on what's important for those particular families before we develop expectations. We always encourage with program-wide leadership teams to have family members as part of their team. If we can do that, it becomes really easy to get a handle on what the community dynamic is like and what is important as far as behavior characteristics or expectations in our community.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can get parents involved, probably makes it a lot easier to, meet them where they're at, as opposed to trying to, gauge and then
for sure
do it on your own. Yeah. Let's see. We had a few listeners who were asking about the images that you use in a classroom. And we had some that were asking if you've noticed a difference in children's responses to real life pictures compared to things like clip art images. If there's any difference that you've noticed, or if they're kind of equitable.
I think when you're working with younger kids, like the 2s and the 3s, it is more powerful to use real images. And then as they get a little bit older and they start being familiar with environmental prints, like stop signs and go signs and things like that, I think it's more reasonable to use the clip art or magazine cutout pictures. But it really just depends on the kids that you're working with, because that's kind of been my standard rule. Like the 2s and the 3s always get real images. But I've been in classrooms where they use clip art for those age groups and it's just fine. So it really depends on the kids that you're working with, and then again on how you teach them and how you get to practice and how you talk about them with the kids. So although we think the images are really important, the kinds of images that you use can vary for those reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. We had a couple listeners who were asking about the is it necessary to review rules and expectations every day in the classroom if the children in the classroom seem to know the rules and expectations and are following them? Is it still, should the teacher still review rules and expectations daily?
Yeah, we think that this is really important for these young learners, that it's something that we talk about all the time. We do a review before we start our day, and then we have reminders throughout the day so that kids are maintaining those skills and they're able to use those skills independently. So yeah, we think it's really important that even in March and in April and in May, that we're still doing reviews of expectations and rules. We're still singing the songs. We're still doing the dino dance. We're still wearing our shirts. We still want to make sure that kids are always having the opportunities to be immersed with those things and being able to practice and hear them throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. We had another listener who was asking, say you start off the school year with a certain set of rules and expectations, but then as the school year progresses, you realize that the rules may not be as relevant as what's needed for the classroom. Do you have any like strategies for adjusting the rules without making it, you know, a big challenge for the children to adjust?
Yeah, like a complete change. I would think about, it's a really good point. And so that's when I was talking about people liking to set expectations and rules that match their mascot or match their school logo, but not really taking into account the skills that kids need to learn that they might be missing. So thinking about acknowledging those skill deficits first will be really important. But I also know that as the school year goes on, we get new kids leave. So the dynamic can change completely with one new 3-year-old little body. So you may need to teach new skills. So I think maybe adding on a specific rule is okay, or maybe changing the way that you talk about a rule or the way that you teach it so that it is teaching the skill that you need to have, that you need to teach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess kind of in a similar vein as well, what a listener is asking, so say like in the middle of the school year, a new child is enrolled in the program or the classroom. Is there anything extra or anything specific that you would do to teach the new child the rules and expectations beyond, say, your daily review of the rules and expectations?
Mm-hmm. We know it's just kind of the nature of our beast, right? That we're getting kids come in and kids leave all the time, kids moving between classrooms. So it is important that we continue to teach on a consistent basis. I don't know if I would do anything extra, but like we saw in the one example and non-example video, she used the child that was brand new to the class as kind of the leader so that she could step up and point to the posters, and she was kind of leading that review. I think that's a great strategy for helping those students that are new to the program learn those things, or maybe setting them in a small group where they're doing an extra activity around expectations or rules, maybe a journaling activity or an art activity, but they may need a little bit of extra practice. And usually they're not the only one. We have others that can use the practice. So we set out a small group activity so that kids can get that extra practice.
Let's see, I think we can take one more question. So a listener that asked, do you keep track of the measurability of classroom rules so that you can know who is meeting the criteria or who may need more reminders or assistance in supporting those rules and expectations within their classroom?
Yeah, so if you have individual kids that are having difficulty following rules or meeting expectations, then I always think about how am I teaching for that child? Are they getting the kind of practice that they need? Because we know that kids will learn different concepts at different paces. So making sure that I'm individualizing the instruction around expectations and rules, that it's just not always the song, because obviously the song is not what they need to learn, but I'm giving them different ways to practice in different settings, and that taking time. And I don't know if I collect specific data on this, but maybe if you had, if you were doing BIRs, behavior incident reports, or other kinds of child specific data, that would come, that would be more apparent. But teachers kind of get the idea when we're having to redirect a specific child more often than others, then that child is really not understanding the rules, and making sure that we teach them in an individualized way before we just rely on the corrections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Denise, for fielding those questions. I know it's always difficult, on the spot.
That's okay.
So I will just mention, I saw that you had that slide in there about the National Pyramid Model Institute. So there are seemingly infinite number of resources on challengingbehavior.org, full of pyramid model resources, modules, infographics, handouts, tip sheets, tons and tons and tons of stuff. So I'll be including a link to this website in your follow-up email tomorrow. But yes, challengingbehavior.org is a fantastic website. So just a few things to wrap up. Certificates of attendance are available for all viewers and also recording viewers as well. So you can download your certificate of attendance either from the handout section of your webinar panel or from the URL below. That's bpub.fyi/teaching-rules-cert. It is case sensitive, so the T, R, and C will need to be capitalized when you're entering that in. You can pull that either from this slide, or you'll be getting a, as I said, an email tomorrow that will have a link to the certificate and slides as well, so you can pull URLs from there. We will also be sending out a quick webinar survey. It's an automated survey that will pop up at the end of this webinar. If you just let us know about your thoughts on this presentation, any future topics that you would like to see covered in future coffee chats, you just complete that survey and we'll be reading through those. And we are extending a special offer for all of our coffee chat viewers, both live and recording. So you can save 20% on most Brooks products at brookspublishing.com when you use the code COFFEE121, and you can save 20% also on Unpacking the Pyramid Model. And if you're looking for additional coffee chat or professional development opportunities, we have a growing library of past coffee chat recordings, and we have a few more coming up this spring, and then we'll be continuing in the fall as well. So you can find all of the recordings and all of our remaining upcoming coffee chats for the spring at bpub.fyi/coffee-chats. And again, I'll also be including links to these in your email tomorrow. And we're hoping that maybe we can take this page down soon, but it's fingers crossed. So we've compiled a array of COVID-19 resources for early childhood professionals, and these include recommended readings, downloadable resources, and other professional development webinars to support your work with young children, especially when working remotely or conducting virtual services. But as I said, hopefully we're nearing the end and we can return to in-person services soon. So with that, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Denise for presenting this terrific webinar and providing us all this fantastic information, and a big thank you to all of our viewers as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.